I may have to leave.
So this you have to submit during the year time, so that's it.
Oh, okay.
So I told him I was gonna read it.
Yeah. Better for you.
Okay. That takes,
Oh, it's off. Somebody signed up for a position.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the August the, is it 7th or 8th? 7th, 2018 convening of the Baltimore City Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. A couple of house rules before we get underway. First, if you have a cell phone, a pager, anything that makes any kind of electronically generated audible sound, plays a ringtone, a chime, a beep, a buzz, etc. We ask at a minimum you please turn those devices to a vibrate only, if not off position. And similarly, to the extent that you need to speak with someone, we ask that you please take those conversations out the double doors to your rear. And the reason for those rules is pretty simple and straightforward. There are a number of microphones which are arrayed around us up here, and those microphones are all very sensitive, not only for the purpose of amplification, but also for the purpose of recording. And cell phones, pagers, conversations, and the like not only generally disrupt the conduct of these proceedings, but also interrupt or interfere with the recording of these proceedings as well. In addition, those of you who are sitting forward of the wall above you, if you turn around, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3 video cameras which are mounted on the wall up there behind you. And there are 1, 2 video cameras which are mounted on the wall up here behind us. These proceedings are being streamed live on the website for the city's cable access network, as well as recorded on video for tape delay broadcasts on the cable access network, as well as stored for all posterity on the city's YouTube channel. So cell phones, pagers, conversations, and the like not only are disruptive to the proceedings, but also interrupt that video recording process as well. With that out of the way, we will be voting at the end of the day. You're certainly more than welcome to hang around and enjoy a civics lesson if you so choose. But if you've got other things to do on this delightfully steamy early August afternoon, that's certainly understandable, and you can call into the zoning board office in the morning and find out how we ruled in your case. If you take out pen and paper, I'll read the number off for the zoning board a couple of times. That number is 410-396-4301. That number again is 410-396-4301. 396-4301. You will, however, need to wait until you receive the formal written notice of the outcome of your case, which should be forthcoming in about 3 to 4 weeks, before you'll be able to get your permit. We certainly ask that you please not build within the city of Baltimore without first obtaining all of your proper permits. If you haven't already done so already, if you're here in opposition to any case today, we ask that you please sign in on our sign-in sheet. The sign-in sheet allows us not only to know generally which cases have opposition, but also allows us to know who needs to receive those aforementioned written notices I was just talking about. In addition, we do have a couple of cases which are being postponed, including, I think, at least one where there are folks who are already signed in opposition to that case. If your case doesn't go forward today and gets postponed, we need to know who you are and how to contact you to let you know when your case will be going forward, as it will not be going forward today. So just please make sure that you sign in on the signing sheet if you're here in opposition to any case today. If you are the appellant, when the cases are called, you'll come forward and you will stand to our left or your right. The opposition, if any, will stand to our right or your left. There are 2 microphones which are up there, 1 for each side. And make sure that you stay close enough to them so that your voice gets picked up on the microphones. But once everyone is up here, we'll get you sworn in. Once we're done with that process, we'll start first with the applicant and be given the opportunity to present the case. Let the board know what it is they're proposing, present any documents, witnesses, and the like that they would like to offer in support of whatever arguments they're making to the board, and respond to whatever questions the board may have. Once the applicant is concluded, we'll then be turning to the opposition, who'll be given the opportunity to do the same thing, that is present their documents, witnesses, et cetera, in support of whatever arguments they're making in opposition to what's being requested by the applicant. Once the opposition is concluded, we'll return back to the applicant and be given the opportunity to respond to any points which are brought up by their opposition, if any, and to offer a closing statement. We won't be going back and forth, unnecessarily delaying things into the late afternoon or early evening, longer than is necessary. We'll generally be calling the cases in the order in which they appear on the docket. It is after we first dispense with some preliminary issues. First, as I mentioned, there are a couple of cases which are being postponed today. These cases will not be going forward. First case we have that's postponed is 2018-178, 1418 through 1420 South Carey Street. That case has been postponed. It won't be going forward today. The other case which has been postponed is 2018-249, 6008 Old Hartford Road. Both of those cases are being postponed at the request of the applicants in those cases, and so won't be going forward today. If you're here in opposition to any of those cases, we ask that you please sign in on the signing sheet so we can let you know when those cases will be going forward. Next are the cases on the consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of cases where the zoning board staff has already reviewed the files in these matters, and the board has concluded that we have sufficient information to approve these cases on the basis of the record submitted thus far. I'm going to call all the consent cases together as a group. So when the first person called will line up here. Everyone else who's called will line up down the dais behind them. Once everyone is up here, we'll get you all sworn in as a group, and then we'll call each case in turn, and as we do, you'll be given the opportunity at that time to offer any material that you would like to have supplemented to the record at that point. First case on the consent agenda is 2018-236, 102 Millbrook Road, Michael Westrate. After them, we'll have 2018-244, 2211 Duker Court, Adam Carballo. After that, we'll have 2018-245, 2605 Reisterstown Road, also 2018-246, 2607 Reisterstown Road. Both of those cases are Lisa Junker. And that's it. Okay. If all those intending to give testimony in these matters will please raise their right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in these hearings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, calling the first case, 2018-236, 102 Millbrook Road, Michael Westrate. Afternoon, sir.
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. We have this as an application to construct a two-story corner addition and one-story rear addition connecting a house to a garage. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything on behalf of the planning department?
Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Westrate, anything further you would like to have added to the record at this time?
Nothing to add?
Okay. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next case, 2018-244, 2211 Duker Court, Adam Carballo.
Yes, sir.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a second floor rear deck at this location. Is that correct?
It's actually a second floor infill addition.
Okay. Just a moment, let me find your.
There's an existing deck there now.
Gotcha.
Mr. Carvalho is correct. The second floor infill addition doesn't change the staff report, as the degree of variance is the same.
Yep. I just wanted to flip through the plans here. Yeah, it's gonna encompass the same area. All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carballo, anything further you'd like to add to supplement the record in this case?
No, thank you.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Next, 2018-245 and 2018-246, 2605 Reisterstown Road and 2607 Reisterstown Road, both cases Lisa Junker.
Hi.
Afternoon, Ms. Junker.
Hello.
We have these as both as requests to use the premises for 3 dwelling units. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. French, anything for the planning department with respect to either appeal?
Planning Department has reviewed both applications and has no objection to approval. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Junker, anything you would like to add to supplement the record in either case?
No, thank you.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your applications, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeals.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Bye,
Take care.
everybody.
All right. Next, we'll address the cases which are on the remainder of our docket, and that will include cases where opposition is signed in. Frequently, we found that opposition is a result of a lack of communication or miscommunication among the parties, and it can frequently be useful to offer the parties an opportunity to have a dialogue between themselves to see if they can't come to a resolution of whatever their dispute is. Obviously, if there are two opposing sides who are engaged in a dispute, and both parties ask the board to resolve the dispute, one of those two parties is bound to go disappointed with the result. And this is your opportunity to avoid that unhappy fate. You certainly don't have to take the opportunity to speak with one another. We do, however, encourage and appreciate it. Should you so choose to have a dialogue amongst yourselves, you can just step out the double doors to your rear, take as long as you need to, and once you've finished, just come back in and let us know that you're ready to go forward. If you're unable to reach any agreement, just have a seat and we'll call you in turn. If you have reached an agreement, when we call you up, you'll just state whatever your agreement is on the record at that time. So I'm going to call the cases off where opposition has signed in. I'll ask you just simply to stand where you are. You don't need to come forward. But just stand where you are. I'll ask you if there's been any dialogue between the parties, and if the parties would like to either have a dialogue now or continue to have a dialogue. Again, should you so choose to speak with one another, just have a step outside. 2017-198, 4123 through 4125 Reisterstown Road. This is Muhammad Iqbal. Okay, and who signed in on this case? Ah, okay. And folks, have you had an opportunity to speak?
Yes, but I would like to speak to him.
Okay, take your time. Next case is 2018-23, 1372 Washington Boulevard, Hamza Nagy. Okay, who's signed in on this one? All right. And folks, have you had an opportunity to speak?
Yes, we have.
Okay, and would you like an opportunity to either continue dialogue now or see if you can't get something worked out?
Certainly try.
Okay, sure. Take your time. When you're done, if you get something worked out, like I said, we'll get you called up here. If not, just have a seat and we'll call you in turn. All right? Oh, just out the double doors to your rear in that large area that's outside. 2018-221, 1001 Oldham Street, Harry Previs. Okay, and who's here on that one? Okay. And folks, have you had an opportunity to speak? No? Okay, would you like to? All right, step outside. 2018-222, 5504 through 5506 Hartford Road, Chanel Jenkins. All right. And you guys are the opposition. And the applicant. Ah, there you are. All right. And have you folks had an opportunity to speak? No? Would you like to have one? Okay. Just when you're ready to go forward, just let us know. A streak of accommodation going. Let's see if we can keep it up. 2018-241, 3410 White Avenue, Joanne Ganworth. Okay. And have you folks had an opportunity to speak?
No, we haven't, but as you know, Mr. Chair, I represent Harbell, and I'm representing Clint Bellhar's position in this matter, and nobody from the association is here, and I can't negotiate.
Okay. Do they know the nature of your opposition?
I'm not sure. I can share that with them.
Okay.
That won't change the position, though.
Well, maybe they'll be convinced and they'll say, well, you're right. Hope springs eternal.
All right.
Yes. That was 2018-241, 3410 White Avenue. Okay. And 2018-251, 827 North Calhoun Street, Adam Carballo. Okay, and who signed in on this case? I know I saw someone who was here. They signed in.
Gentleman in the white shirt on the left-hand side.
Sir? You're here on 2018-251, 827 North Calhoun Street?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's confusion on the address. I thought it was 1340 West Lafayette Ave.
No, this is 827 North Calhoun Street. West, yeah, we don't have a case.
That's correct, because that would be, the building is facing 1340.
Oh, okay.
So it's that.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, would you care to speak with the applicant?
Yeah, briefly.
Okay, sure. Give it a go. Don't go giving me credit just yet. All right, first case, 2018-231, 2068 East Belvedere Avenue, Bobby Green.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. All right. And ma'am, are you Ms. Green?
Yes,
Okay. And ma'am, we have this as an application to enclose a front porch at this location. Is that correct?
yes,
All right. Would you please raise your right hand to be sworn?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Do we have staff reports?
We have one letter in opposition from the Loch Raven Improvement Association.
And the planning department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. And what's the letter say from the community association?
That they vehemently oppose the zoning variance proposed for this property to erect a structure that encloses the porch, and lists essentially the different variances that are sought.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And ma'am, why don't you tell us what it is you have planned here?
First of all, sir, thank you. My association is the Laura Association. Lock Raven is on the opposite side of my street. I was just closing in. I didn't make it any bigger or no larger. And there are, in my area, there are so many homes that have closed in their porches. Due to an illness that I have, I'm unable to use like any type of insects sprays or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to close it in so I can enjoy my home. I'm retired now.
Okay. And how are you planning on closing it in?
Just, bricks up to where the regular rail was and then large windows.
Okay. And
Are you going to retain the awning roof, or are you going to put a new roof on?
There's a new roof on.
So I think this is, the picture we have shows an awning type roof.
Okay, I thought that the Inspector Campbell would be here because he has pictures of the new roof with the rafters and all of that to show that it is up to code. I didn't bring that, but I did bring pictures of other enclosed buildings, just like within 1 block radius of where I live at.
Okay. If you'd like us to make them part of the record, we can.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
okay. Here is what the problem is going to be. In your front yard, there's a required setback, and there is an exception for certain encroachments into that space. One of the exceptions for encroachments into that space is for it's referred to as a porch. However, the code then says unenclosed, with or without roof, not more than 1 story tall, no more than 8 feet into a required yard. If you enclose in that porch area, it then no longer becomes a porch. It becomes an enclosed addition to your home, which at that point is no longer an exception to the setback requirement. So I guess the problem with what you're seeking is that by enclosing it, you take yourself out of the exception that you currently now enjoy, and then it becomes an unpermitted encroachment into your front yard setback area.
When you're saying step back area, are you saying that others can't see or what? Because I don't see it.
No, the setback is just simply the area that's from the front of your property to the front of your house. So that is your required front yard. Okay? And that space is supposed to remain clear. You're not really allowed to build in that front space area. An exception is for unenclosed porches, which is what you currently have with the awning and with all of that. If you enclose that space, however, you now have created an addition to your house because the requirement for porches says unenclosed, and by enclosing it, it's no longer an unenclosed porch, obviously. And so at that point, you no longer have the exception, or the structure that you have is no longer an exemption from the code. It then becomes an unpermitted encroachment into that space. So in sum, like what you're asking for, we can't really give you the authority to do.
Even though it's in the same area footprint, I haven't changed the footprint at all.
That's correct, because you currently, what you have there is,
So if I take,
you have an exemption for the unenclosed porch. But only so long as it is and remains unenclosed. Once you enclose it by putting up walls and things like that, at that point, it's no longer an unenclosed porch.
may I ask why in that area so many porches are closed in?
Okay. I can't really tell you with respect to each and every property. What I can say is that the zoning code did change recently. I don't know if the zoning classification for where your property is changed necessarily with that process. But under the current code, you're not allowed to have an enclosed porch in that space. So your neighbors may have built those previously unenclosed, now maybe enclosed porches prior to the change in the law, which occurred within the last couple of years.
Okay, well, because I checked with my association, and they didn't have no objections.
Yes.
I checked with my neighbors.
This isn't, well, it's not really up to them. The code applies whether or not there is or isn't opposition to a case, whether or not your neighbors or community association say that they're okay with it. It's sort of beyond that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, can you state your name for the record, ma'am?
Tammy Mays, this is
Okay.
my mom. So are there any cases where exemptions to enclose are given?
No,
None.
no. We can't, so the board is a board of limited power. So the mayor and the city council pass the zoning code and they say, this is what the law is gonna be. There are certain provisions of the zoning code where we have, do have the discretion to grant variances, things like that. However, in your case, the kind of structure that you are seeking to build isn't a permitted encroachment into that space.
So if that plan were to change or to meet or to be adjusted, could she be considered for a variance?
No, the issue that, like, if she wanted to build, say, a larger patio or front porch, so she was going beyond the existing footprint. However, the exemption also says can be no longer than 8 feet. So let's say she was maybe making it the length of the front of the house. You could, at that point, you would technically be seeking a variance because it's a permitted encroachment into restricted space, so you're enlarging that area. But for your purposes right now, for what you are seeking, no, the board doesn't have the authority to allow you to build an enclosed porch in the space because the code says that we can't permit that.
So who does have the authority to do that?
Well, you could maybe talk to your council person.
Okay.
The mayor and city council are the ones who enact the zoning code, so if they change the law, then the law would be changed. But the board can't do that.
Question, this might be better for staff. Would screening in a porch be considered enclosing the porch?
Frankly, be a matter of, I think that, we're not really here to give you advice. That would be more of a question for enforcement. But, if you were talking about just screening as opposed to walls and windows and things like that, that may take you outside of that. But again, that's something you'll have to talk to the enforcement staff about as far as, and it sounds like you've already been in discussions with the
And
inspector.
and I was told that we was back further enough. He was supposed to have been here today because he said that it was. I had enough, as you say, the setback. It did not intervene with anything.
Sure.
I think we're clear what we have to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you'd call case number 251, I believe they're going to postpone.
Okay. Calling 2018-251, 827 North Calhoun Streets.
Yes.
Mr. Caballo. Sir? Okay, we have a postponement request in this case?
We do, yes.
All right. And your name, sir?
Leonard Foot.
Leonard, I'm sorry?
Foot.
Okay. And Mr. Foote, you're consenting to the continuance?
Yes.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, 2018-251, 827 North Calhoun Street is postponed. Just let us know when you're ready to go forward, and we'll get you back in on the docket at that time. All right?
All right. Thank you.
Okay, take care. (2018-232) 1419 Utah Place, Jonathan Brett.
Hello.
Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You're Mr. Brett?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Brett, we have this as an application to use the premises as 2 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Gentlemen, if you both would raise your right hands to be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
We do. We have a letter from Bolton Hill Community Association, a letter from Bolton Square Homeowners Association, homeowner Mr. Stuart Cologne, and Mr. Walter Howard, all in opposition, citing the variance for a parking space.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that the variance is for 1 parking space, and that because of the fact that this property is built in a certain way or improved in a certain way, that there is not sufficient space in the rear yard to provide a parking space. The department considers a variance of 1 space would be appropriate, as there's a practical difficulty with providing parking on site. This property is also located in the Bolton Hill Historic District, and the department therefore recommends that approval of this application be subject to the condition that all exterior changes in connection with the addition of 1 dwelling unit to the premises, including any additions, demolitions, and alterations, are completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
And Mr. Brett, do you, are you agreeable to the condition offered by the Planning Department?
Yes, we actually have already got our ATP to proceed for this addition.
Okay. And why don't you tell us about what's being proposed here?
Sure. So we're proposing creating a separate dwelling unit in our basement, which is being finished into a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. Most, if not all, of the houses, I think all except for 1 on our street, already have basement apartments. There's only 3 actual single-family homes on the 1400 block of Utah Street, or Utah Place. So we're trying to make use of our basement in the most in the best way, so as to continue with the restoration of the home. We have over $200,000 worth of work we're trying to put into the house, which has been approved by CHAP, and we kind of need the basement apartment to do that. So we're trying to make it affordable to live there and fix up a 150-year-old home. So.
Okay. Now, what you're here on is a variance for parking. So why don't you tell me about what your available parking area is, and we got a
Sure.
aerial, but I'm not sure of what the dimensions and whatnot are.
Sure. So there's no parking available on for our home. Our house is improved all the way up to about 4 feet beyond the Jordan Alley. So we do have about 4 feet, but it's not enough for a permanent parking spot there. And
So that I'm properly oriented here.
sure.
This is the alley here, and that's the road?
That's correct. So
Okay.
the road is Utah Place, which is an avenue, so it's a divided road. There is not permanent parking on either the front or the back of the home, so an individual could park in either spot. Also, beyond on the 1400 block of Utah, there's only a few houses. There's a few empty lots, and there's also a park, and then ultimately a building that is unused. So there's an entire block or two of street parking that is not used really by anyone. So there's plenty of parking in the front on Utah Place, and in the back with Bolton Square, which is on Jordan Street, which is where the entrance to the apartment would be. It's also unpermitted parking, and the Bolton Square individuals have their own parking spaces per unit. So there's plenty of parking both on the front on Utah Place and also in back on Jordan Street.
But just not on your property?
Correct. Everyone else on our block has garages as well, so that makes it ample parking for really anyone. But the way our house was improved, there is no parking on our property.
You will be an owner occupant?
Yes, and we will stay owner
You
occupant.
said that this is not a permit parking area?
No, there's no permanent parking on either street.
Okay. Anything else, brother?
No.
Questions? All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
I'm in opposition.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't have this as a case where there was opposition signed in. All right.
Your name, sir?
Your name?
My name is Walter Howard. I'm the president of the Bolton Square Homeowners Association.
Okay.
Parking is already full on the 1400 block of Jordan Street. There is no parking behind the Union Hall, which is the unoccupied building he refers to on the next block. It's parking only for the Union Hall. It's not public parking. I think the parking on Jordan Street behind his house is 2-hour limit parking.
Okay, so I can
could be wrong
confine
about that.
the issues here. His requirement is for, he has a parking requirement that goes along with his property. That is, he has to be able to provide parking on his own property.
Right.
And he's seeking a variance of that. And his argument is that he does not have the physical space on his property to offer parking. His argument is that because the house extends out all the way to the alley in the rear, or practically to it, I think there's like a 4-foot gap there. But because there's not sufficient space on his property, he's seeking a variance of that parking requirement. So the availability or unavailability of parking on, in the public rights of way, et cetera, that's not really what the question is. The question really is more as to his individual parcel.
Okay, we just want to make sure that he doesn't get a parking space on the back of the house because the alley is not wide enough.
Okay, well, that would not be something that we would be able to do.
Okay.
If he's unable to provide parking on his own property and he gets a variance of that requirement, well then, for practical purposes, he's alleviated of that requirement, and yet he's now going to have to find parking somewhere in the neighborhood.
All right.
All right. Anything in response?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anything further?
No.
No? All right. Thank you both.
Mr. Chair, appeal number 241, I believe, is going to postpone.
Okay. Calling 2018-241, 3410 White Avenue, Joanne Ganruth. Okay, folks, would you identify yourselves for the record, please?
Joanne Granruth.
I'm Mike Hilliard. I'm the Community Services Director at the Harbell Community Organization.
Okay. And Ms. Genrith, I understand that you're seeking a postponement of your case today?
Yes.
Okay. And the opposition is consenting to that?
Yes, the opposition's consenting that because the postponement is so that she can take the time to meet with the community association and explain her plans for the property.
Okay. 2018-241, 3410 White Avenue is postponed.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Uh, 2018-235, 1609 through 1611 Bank Street, Juan Portillo. All right. Sir, you're Mr. Portillo?
This is Mr. Portillo over here.
Okay. Your name?
Kevin Salazar.
Okay. And Mr. Salazar, are you?
Translating.
Okay. All right. And we have this as an application to expand the existing first floor restaurant occupying 1611 Bank Street into the first floor of 1609 Bank Street. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Now, when we get you guys sworn in, you, Mr. Salazar, will take a different oath than the oath for Mr. Portillo, so you can translate for him. So I guess why don't you first take the oath, and then we'll get Mr. Portillo.
Sounds good.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to translate this hearing from English to Spanish and Spanish back to English to the best of your ability?
Yes, sir.
And do you swear or affirm to testify that in this hearing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Well, you need to translate it for him, and then he needs to respond back.
It's too smooth. Está preguntando si va a decir toda la verdad. Sí. Todo correcto. Yes. You got that?
Okay. All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that these are two separate properties side by side, 1609 Bank Street being a corner property, 1611 the property next to it. These properties are currently residential mixed-use buildings, separately residential mixed use. However, in order to be eligible for the proposed conditional use as a neighborhood commercial establishment, the applicant would need to provide the board with information showing that these existing structures were originally constructed and used for non-residential uses as part of consideration of this application. Second thing is the department notes that the board did approve the use of the first floor level of the property, 1609 Bank Street, as a restaurant with limited hours of operation and with no alcoholic beverages sales in its approval of appeal number 2014-258. And if the board was to approve this particular application, the department suggests the board consider extending the conditions of approval of application 2014-258 to this particular appeal. The department also reviewed the floor plans that were provided with the application and frankly is expressing a concern that the layout of the properties, which has only one proposed connection between the shared wall between the two properties, which would be in an area that is not accessible to the public, would result in the functional use of 1611 Bank Street as having only a counter and a narrow waiting area in front of its kitchen area, which would make it more in the nature of a carry-out food shop, which is a prohibited use in the R8 zoning district. The department is recommending a deferral of a complete hearing of this application to allow the applicant time to consolidate these two properties and to revise the floor plan for the proposed use to show that the portion of the proposed use, now known as the first floor of 1611 Bank Street, would be an integral part of the restaurant at 1609 to 1611 Bank Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And Mr. French, did you previously provide the applicant with a copy of the planning department's letter?
Yes, the copy was mailed to the applicant. Now, I do not know if the applicant has had the time to have that translated yet.
Sure.
Una copia vos de la papel que dice esta gente, diciendo como los reglas y todo eso. Como reglas diciendo como que tenía que hacer como un plano nuevo, como te mandaron. Aquí está. He didn't get it translated though. That hasn't been translated, so I doubt that at this point he understands everything that had to have gotten done.
Okay. All right. Well, the planning department is basically concerned that I guess they're concerned about the consolidation of the properties, and so they're asking for the case to be deferred, which i.e. postponed, until there's more to address the consolidation, and they also have concerns about how the structures are proposed to be connected. So in light of the planning department's request, did he want to delay the proceeding today in order to satisfy their concern, or does he want to proceed?
Ella está preguntando si va a querer esperar. Decimos que lo espera porque supuestamente tiene que juntar los dos lugares como un mismo compañías, todo de una vez, porque todo está como junto, ¿me entiendes? Y después puede regresar a ver qué pedo, porque ella está diciendo que va a querer que diga planos para cómo está poniendo la puerta adentro y todas esas cosas también. Sí, toda la información está acá, pero supuestamente tiene que hacer un proceso para a ver cómo lo va a poder probar que todo está correcto y que la pared, la puerta que abrimos está bien, como está. So, lo esperamos más tiempo. Porque si lo pones diciendo que no lo quiere esperar, después no puede dar cualquier respuesta. Si lo hace esperar, no puede dar la información que quiere para poder asegurar que va a decir que sí. So he said a postponement, if that's pretty much in his best interest, he'll take it.
Okay. 2018-235, 1609, and 1611 Bank Street is postponed.
Thank you.
Mr. French, do you have information on the planner? Oh, sir, just a, he's got some information for who you can contact.
Okay.
All right. 2018-239, 1900 through 1902 Light Street, and 2018-240, 1904 through 1922 Light Street. Both cases Nate Prettle or Al Berry. All right, Mr. Berry. With respect to appeal number 2018-239, that is 1900 through 1902 Light Street. We have that as an application to use the entire premises as a restaurant. And then as to 2018-240, 1904 through 1922 Light Street. We have that as an application to consolidate 1904 through 1922 Light Street. That is lots 3 through 9. Construct a third floor addition using the entire premises as offices. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony in this matter will raise their right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Mr. Chairman, with regard to application 2018-239, the department has reviewed this application, noted that this is a street corner property. This particular building was definitely constructed and used originally for non-residential purposes, and therefore is one that qualifies for the neighborhood commercial establishment consideration. The applicant is proposing a restaurant in this particular property, 1900 to 1902 Light Street. The property is bordered, quite frankly, by a large paved area that is part of the lot that then becomes merged with the public right-of-way. There is no actual sidewalk or curbing in this particular area. The applicant is proposing to have an outdoor dining area in conjunction with the restaurant. And in order to do this, the applicant is going to need to essentially both secure the outdoor dining area from possible interaction with vehicles, provide sufficient pedestrian passage in front of this particular area, and separate it from the loading and service functions of the restaurant itself. The department recommends that approval of this application be subject to the condition that all modifications and site improvements are completed in accordance with plans to be approved by the Department of Planning. In addition to meeting the requirements of Section 14-329 of the zoning code, the accessory outdoor dining area should be subject to these additional conditions. A minimum of 6 feet of sidewalk width must be designated between the outdoor dining area and Wells Street and remain clear and unobstructed for pedestrian access or use. The capacity of the outdoor dining area will be not more than that shown on the approved site plan. The tables will be limited to those that can accommodate 4 patrons and are to be kept against or near to the north wall of the building. There will be no outdoor bar, no outdoor music, jukebox, or other form of entertainment, and all patrons must be seated for dining and served by wait staff. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Berry, is your client, I guess that was appeal number 239?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, one final staff report. There's a letter of support from the South Baltimore Neighborhood Association.
Okay. And Mr. Berry, is your client amenable to the condition offered by the Planning Department with respect to appeal number 239?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And Mr. French, appeal number 240?
Appeal number 240 is a request to use 1904 to 1922 Light Street for offices and to add a 3rd floor to the central portion of the building, which is currently 2 stories tall. Again, this property was originally built and constructed for non-residential use and in fact is listed in its National Register Historic District as a contributing structure. The department has reviewed this application and noted, of course, that there is a large parking variance that would be associated with this particular request, and therefore the applicant would need to show that the intended office tenants or occupants would arrive on site predominantly by means other than an automobile in order to satisfy one of the criteria for neighborhood commercial establishments. Alternatively, the applicant should provide information about off-street parking spaces obtained nearby on other properties that would meet the zoning code standards for off-street parking. The property is located in a designated historic district. It may be eligible for historic tax credits for restoration and renovation. However, obviously that would not apply to the proposed 3rd floor, which would be considered new construction. The Department of Planning recommends that approval of this application be subject to the condition that all modifications and site improvements are completed in accordance with plans and elevations to be approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
And Mr. French, one question. Given that this appeal seeks an addition to the structure, and given that neighborhood commercial establishments, by the text of the code, quote, are limited to the reuse of existing buildings, the Planning Department have a stance or position as to the portion of the request that encompasses the addition to be constructed?
Yes, the Planning Department did not take a position on the issue of whether addition to an existing building that would qualify for neighborhood commercial establishment would be covered by the definition of neighborhood commercial establishment. There is no formal prohibition in the zoning code on enlargement of one of those buildings, and the department is deferring to the wisdom of the board.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, and
Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Berry,
again, I'm sorry, again, just one more staff report. There is a letter of support from the South Baltimore Neighborhood Association.
Okay. Mr. Berry, is your client amenable to the condition offered by the Department of Planning with respect to appeal number 240?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Why don't you get in and tell us what is being proposed here?
Okay, thank you very much. Here with Michael Abrams and Steve Wilhide. Mr. Wilhide and his wife are owners of the property. Mr. Abrams acting as a developer with the Wilhides for the property. It's a very exciting proposal. If you've looked at your plat, it's at the end of Light Street, almost to the expressway beyond it. And it's, as was stated by Mr. French, it's originally built as an abattoir back in early 1900s. It's 4 separate tax parcels, but it's essentially operated as one building. Most recently, Mr. Wilhide had used it for window treatment, manufacturing, and fabrication. So it's really an industrial use, no retail. It certainly meets the definition of neighborhood commercial as anticipated under Transform. We originally, we have applied for a 3rd-story addition, but recognizing the board's previous positions about existing structures, we're going to withdraw that aspect at this time. We would not like to be turned down for that. We have a potential user that could actually come in and apply for a separate conditional use under the R8 zoning. So we think that would clearly, the board would have the authority to grant it rather than put you in a position of expanding the definition of neighborhood commercial. Okay. So we would withdraw that aspect, and we look forward to coming back to the board under a conditional use application when we have that tenant in place.
Okay, so then appeal number 240 then is just limited to
The existing
consolidating.
Consolidating the lots in the existing building.
Okay.
So that deals with the 3rd story. Under Transform, I think most of the board, not all the board, is aware that there are conflicting statements in Transform as to whether parking is actually required for neighborhood commercial or not. The Planning Department staff report even highlights that. On one hand, they say, and I think the board staff report calls for as many as 30 spaces are needed for the office use. Later on, their staff report, and I would argue that there's a specific prohibition statement in the zoning code that says neighborhood commercial is exempt from off-street parking. Putting that aside, we also have the ability, because the structure is over 50 years old, to apply to planning for an historic exemption, because this property takes up 95%, the building takes up 95% of the property. There's no practical way of providing parking. I'm going to have Mr. Abrams in a minute talk about 4 potential options that we've talked with nearby property owners that would satisfy it, and we will then ask the board for a variance of the parking requirement if it is in fact needed under these mitigating circumstances. Under neighborhood commercial, the uses that are proposed fit within a definition. We have basically, we're looking at co-working office space in the building as shown on your floor plans. We have a potential tenant that we're negotiating with for the restaurant in the one building. Those plans have not yet been fully realized for internal purposes or even the outdoor seating, but we can accept planning department's recommendations on that. And the other thing is a sort of a personal training yoga type studio, which I think fits within a neighborhood commercial definition as well. Unless there are any questions, I'd like to introduce Mike Abrams. He can talk about his experience with development around the city in this area in particular, and then also talk about the parking, and then we'll answer any questions you might have. And also we have the additional copies of the neighborhood letter. Just in terms of process, South Baltimore Improvement Association, we met with them on 2 separate occasions, and one at a board meeting, one at a general meeting. I believe it was unanimous support of the plans. They're very excited about bringing some additional commercial resources and office resources down to this part of their neighborhood.
Where would the outside seating be?
It's at the corner of Wells Street and the back alley, I guess. It's a very Marshall. It's a very small area that would be, and it actually faces another restaurant that's been.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Sir?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Any questions I can answer?
Sure. I guess if generally you can discuss what the development plan is for these, I guess, the two parcels, and also if you can discuss the parking arrangements that you've been in discussion with as far as satisfying your parking requirement, et cetera.
This property is in the middle of three major apartment communities. To the, on one side is 101 East Wells, about 280 units. Across the street is 2 East Wells, about 153 units. And then on the other side is, on Marshall, is 1901 South Charles, about 168 units or so. This property being historic, the vision is to satisfy and fulfill unmet demands for restaurants and food, as well as co-working and office space. And it's really a location to bring people together, from eating to working to wellness, and really make this a community space that will work for anybody seeking a place to hang out, a place to do work, a place to have coffee, a place to have a meal, a gathering place. It's really what is missing down in this area. As for parking, we have been in discussions. We have 4 options for the day. Currently, because of all the housing, there is more than ample, more than adequate street parking. It's very similar to 2 blocks away, Zero Fox renovated the old Pabst Castle building. For us, we've accepted the street parking. However, we know that from a practical matter, we may or may not need additional parking. So we have actually, we've been in discussions with both 2 East Wells and 1901 South Charles Street. They both have unused parking during the day. It's very similar in other instances in Federal Hill where office users at 111 Light Street utilized the West Street garage, where they had time limits and they had to leave by 6 p.m. So we know we have those options. Furthermore, the National Federation for the Blind has been used, it's currently being used actually for the restaurants for a valet service for the peak days of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening. So we know that we can go to them for the restaurant side. And then we have a 4th option where across the street from us at 1901 Light Street is the Guardian Services, which is a warehouse operation. They only work during the day, and they have Winder Street, which they occupy, that is separate from their lot, that could actually would be ideal for valet service for the evening as well. So we do have options.
How many spaces on Winder Street, do you estimate?
We could do at least 50 if we needed to. It would be great if we needed all 50, but we know it's there.
And then there was also a concern raised by the Department of Planning with the proposed outdoor seating, that given that there was no curb or sidewalk that exists there, like it's really curb, so that it's just flush with the street, that there would need to be some improvements made to build up that curb. Any plans in that regard?
That curb will be built up. It's partially built up right now, but it will be completely raised.
All right. I think the existing, yeah. All right, so that it would square off, I guess, at the
yes
margin of the, I guess, at the junction point
yes
of the street. All right.
And we did discuss that with the planning staff.
All
Chairman, I had a question, real quick. Just to clarify, so this is going under 2018-239, correct? To use the entire premises as a restaurant. Under neighborhood commercial, 14328G says uses limited to building interior. All business, servicing, processing, and storage uses must be located within the building. How does your outdoor seating plan par with that provision? Or is it barred by that provision?
Well, I would hope it would not be barred by that provision, and that's something that I know the board has ruled on in several occasions. And if you were to take the position that it could not be done, then we obviously will not be able to put the few outdoor seats that would be there. I would hope that wouldn't be the case, and I think it's a glitch in frankly, the zoning code to not provide some ability by the board to allow outdoor space as part of neighborhood commercial. Neighborhood commercial was also designed for existing buildings that may have outdoor space associated with it that have historically been used by a fire department or a school or a business even, and to take that away just because it doesn't explicitly say it, I think would be maybe a plausible interpretation, but maybe not the correct interpretation.
And just so that the applicant and everyone here kind of understands that this neighborhood commercial establishment is a new tool that was added under the most recent iteration of the zoning code. And it's a very good tool. It's a very useful tool, in my opinion. However, it has limits, and those limits are set by the Baltimore City Council and not the board. So it's just important for everyone moving forward to understand what this board has the authority to do and what it does not have the authority to do. And we have at least one council member in the room right now. And those are the folks in which, if there's going to be deviations or changes to that kind of scheme under neighborhood commercial, that's the best place for that. So, and again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here. I just want to make sure that.
No, I think it's a fair point, and I would point out the city council yesterday actually provided amended transform in 40 different cases, one of which was expanding the definition of neighborhood commercial to deal with an issue that came before the board almost a year ago that we were involved in. And I think there are going to be continued tinkerings with it as we go forward. So, no, I can't say that it explicitly permits it. Mr. French mentioned that it doesn't explicitly prohibit additions either, but we understand how the board has chosen to take a conservative interpretation of that. That actually was discussed at the council when the transform amendment was being debated, and I suspect something will come back on that to perhaps allow for additions, but up to a certain percentage perhaps, the way the non-conforming uses are doing.
Okay. Then it's the 240. I think it's a little bit more straightforward at this point, given the modification of the appeal. Was there anything further?
No, I can recite if the board needs why this meets the conditional use standards and also the requirement if the board decides that a variance would be needed for parking as opposed to taking the other section which says it doesn't require it. We can go through that if the board likes, but I think you're aware of those standards. And this is a great project in a really developing neighborhood, which is, as Mr. Abrams said, had a lot of apartments built and not a lot of commercial retail services for them. The apartment buildings were allowed to have, or one apartment building in particular was allowed to have commercial because it was over a certain number of units. So that's how Minnow, which is a new restaurant across the street, was allowed to go there. If there are any questions, we'll be glad to try to answer them.
I was just looking at the requirements for your, what your parking requirement would be without the third floor.
It was around 30-some spaces for the offices.
Yeah, I think that our numbers have that the third floor addition would, okay, it adds 6,900 square feet. totaling 32.9, so we back that out.
Staff report cited 29 spaces in that instance.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 30 spaces, right? And again, as Mr. Abrams testified, the strong possibility exists, if this were to be approved, for providing daytime office parking, which is abundantly available on the street today, not subject to permit parking. But more importantly, from a practical standpoint, having the availability of garages within a block of this for daytime, that's available. The real issue would be the ironic thing, the restaurant parking isn't that, you only required 4 spaces, whereas the need will be greater than that, and we think Winder Street and if not these,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Federation for the Blind.
Representation had been that, that up to 50 spaces were accessible at one of the alternatives.
That's right.
Yeah. Was that the Winder Street one?
Winder Street.
That's right. Okay. All right. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You ready for them? Or
Yeah, I was going to. Just looking for my form. Okay. 2018-23, 1372 Washington Boulevard. Hamza Nagy.
Yes.
Okay. Sir, you're Mr. Nagy?
Yes.
All right. We have this as an application to use the first floor as a convenience/grocery store at this location. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony in this matter would please raise their right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Do we have staff reports?
Yes, we have several letters of opposition. One from the president from the Southwest Partnership. We have a letter in opposition signed by Ms. Erica Brockman, who's executive director of the Southwest Baltimore Charter School. We have a letter of opposition on behalf of the citizens of Pigtown Historic, or the Community Association, signed by Ms. Kelly Eastman, who is here today. And then we also have a letter that is in support of the citizens of Pigtown's decision to oppose, signed by Councilman Reisinger, who is also here to testify today.
Department of Planning reviewed this application, noted that this property is in the Washington Village Urban Renewal Plan area. This particular urban renewal plan does not prohibit this particular proposed use. However, the plan requires approval of all exterior renovations to structures in the urban renewal area. The building for which this use is proposed is currently a residential mixed-use building covering the entire lot. The department is recommending that approval of this application be subject to the condition that all exterior alterations or renovations of the existing structure be completed in accordance with plans approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Nagy, are you, do you accept the conditions offered by the planning department?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Why don't you tell us about what you are proposing to do here?
I want to postpone.
Oh, okay. That makes it a lot easier. Councilman, the opposition is unopposed to the postponement request?
For the community.
Okay.
Yes, we're gonna work to try to work on the conditions of the
Okay, and your name, ma'am?
Kelly.
Kelly Eastman. Okay. All right. 2018-23, 1372 Washington Boulevard is postponed. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Councilman.
How do we just?
When you're ready to go forward, just contact the board office. That's the number that I read off at the beginning. When you're ready to go forward, and we'll get you in at that time. All right.
Thank you.
One question, Mr. Chair, members of the board. When they meet, past history, they went through an MOU, that's
Mhm.
acceptable.
Yes, yes. Yeah, if you come to an agreement and you draw up an MOU, in that instance, that would be appended to whatever approval that we would generate, if we generate one.
That would be like legally binding?
Yes, yeah, it would, the order would incorporate the MOU, so that would become part of it.
Okay, because I'm so concerned is if they were to sell, whether it's a year or 6 years, that would be attached.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care. All right. And all the way up to the top, 2017-198, 4123 through 4125 Reisterstown Road, Mohammed Iqbal. All right. Sir, you're Mr. Iqbal?
Yes.
Okay, and we have this as an application to use the premises as an auto repair garage with accessory towing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ma'am, if you could come forward and say your name for the record?
My name is Joy Dabney.
Okay.
I'm representing the Towanda Neighborhood Association.
What's the neighborhood association?
Towanda Neighborhood Association.
Okay, you can pull that microphone, by the way, down. It adjusts. There you go. And now, folks, you had an opportunity to speak before this case, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to get anything worked out, or are you still opposed at this time?
We worked it out.
Okay, you worked out an agreement then? Okay.
Yes.
All right, we can get into that once we get on the record. If all those who are intending to testify in this case raise their right hands to be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this particular property is contained in a residential zone, R6. It's also in the Park Heights Urban Renewal Plan area. Records available to this department indicate that this property received a condemnation notice in September of 2014, and therefore, one of the important things for the applicant to establish is that non-conforming use of the property has not been abandoned or discontinued. The Park Heights Urban Renewal Plan does not allow this use in the medium-density residential land use district designated in the plan. Therefore, the only way that this can be allowed is going to be under the category of continued non-conforming use. The department, based upon the information available to it, recommends disapproval of the application because the proposed use is not permitted at this location, according to the Park Heights Urban Renewal Plan, and because non-conforming use of the property has been abandoned or discontinued for more than 12 consecutive months. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay. Mr. Iqbal, you said that you worked out an agreement with your opposition. Okay, so why don't you tell us first about what you guys got resolved?
We talk about the plan, what I want to do. We're going to build garage up there, a new building, sport for the community, maybe local people will be work there, and improvement for the neighborhood.
Okay. And what agreement did you work out with your opposition?
I'm going to be member of the community and sport for the community.
Okay. And ma'am, did the applicant just express the terms of your agreement as you understood them?
Yes, he did.
Okay, all right. All right, we can, you're holding something there. Was that something you want to pass up right now? Okay, we'll get to that in just a minute. So we will, or actually probably be easiest if after the hearing, if one or the other of you, do you have a card, Mr. Baumgartner? All right. If once you you can put together an email, just what you're stating, what your the terms of your agreement are, and then that way we'll have that in the file, and then we can incorporate it into whatever approval, if any, we generate in this case.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Now, Mr. Iqbal, the I guess the question from the planning department with respect to this case is really it comes down to what the with what the prior use of the property has been. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
That property was used for auto repair in my knowledge. And but when I get that property, it was empty, and it was a lot of trash and dump up there. And last about 3 months, I've been cleaning up, and this is what I've been doing up there to build a new, get a permission to have a new building there.
Okay. So you just purchased the property?
Yes.
Okay. And had you been familiar with it previously at all? Before you bought it, did you know anything about it? Had you driven by it? You knew about it at all? Or?
Yeah, I see some people work there, but I don't know they are authorized or unauthorized. And but I saw some people, they do work in there.
Okay. All right. Is there information from the planning department that there was a condemnation notice?
Yes, it's previously been cleared before I purchased the property. I don't know they updated yet or not. But
Oh, okay. When you say it was cleared, what do you mean by that?
there was fines, and they already paid the fines.
Okay.
And the property has already been cleaned. There's nothing up there right now. You know, I clean everything in there.
Okay. Now you handed us up a letter
Park Heights Renaissance Community.
from the Park Heights Renaissance Board of Directors, signed by the Executive Director, Marcus Pollock. Auto Repair Development, it's directed to the board. It's addressed to whom it may concern. We have reviewed the project plans for NIT LLC to reestablish an auto repair concern at 4123 through 4125 Reisterstown Road. The renderings and site drawings do not appear to be inconsistent with the character of the community and provides a measure of improvement to the area that has been the focus of some decline. Assuming that the community association that governs the area is supportive of this proposal, we would follow their support of this proposal. We appreciate your attention to this matter. Is this a letter for us to
Yes.
have in the file? Okay. All right. And ma'am, I believe you said you were here on behalf of the community association, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's, I guess yours is the community association that the letter refers to?
Yes.
Okay. And ma'am, do you have any knowledge about this property at all?
It's been vacant for a very long time. I can't tell you how many years, but it's been an eyesore for years.
Yeah, it was sort of the general tone I got from the letter from Park Heights Renaissance. Do you know what businesses may have operated there in the past? I guess maybe the last one you saw that was there, if you remember.
I was told by some of the neighbors it used to be a Amoco station. Now, I've lived up there a long time, but I don't remember an Amoco station up there.
Okay.
But the businesses that are on Reisterstown Road, a lot of them work on cars. And they may have a building there, and they have a lot of cars just parked in the lot, and maybe one small building. So next door, and I don't know if they divided that lot up, but there was always a building there that looked like it was selling cars and fixing cars. But it was always an eyesore, even though it was a business.
Okay. You said you lived in the area for some time?
Yes, since
you remember seeing an
1958.
Amoco there. Do you remember seeing any other business there?
The car dealership, but it was a car dealership there when I was young, and it was it looked like any other car business ship, like the one on, I think it was called Luby's, maybe. But now it's being used as a warehouse, and that's been changed over to a grocery store, just part of it. And then the land that's going towards Quantico is just lots there, and it's a lot of abandoned cars and trash.
Okay. You said there's a grocery store there?
In that warehouse. It's a warehouse that used to be the car dealership. and now they have a grocery store in there, and they're getting ready to open a mattress warehouse on the corner going towards,
Because what we have is a photo of it is right here. It's the part that's marked in the blue rectangle there.
Right here, I think. Yeah, I believe so.
And this is where Mr. Muhammad wants to put his. And then, see this building?
Mm-hmm.
I believe all of this was with this building. So this building, they used to sell cars, and it's just a lot of abandoned cars because it hasn't been open for years. Now, this is a warehouse here.
Okay.
And this is where the grocery store is.
Okay, and
I say
down in that
grocery
other
store,
part.
That's very loosely, okay?
I understood.
And then at the end, the warehouse is being turned into a mattress warehouse.
Okay, all right. So you saw, so those uses you were talking about, those are in those, like right in the corner of the photo.
Right.
There's some larger commercial buildings that are there. All right. Okay. Any questions? No. All right. Is there anything further? No? Okay, all right. Thank you both very much.
I should send this to you within the next couple of days.
Yes, that should be fine. Okay. Okay. 2018-221, 1001 Oldham Street, Harry Priebus.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Priebus on behalf of the applicant. And with me to my immediate right is Mr. Steve Zadera, the owner of the building.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Priebus, we have this as an application to use a portion of the premises as a laundromat. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Folks, if all those intending to give testimony in this matter would please raise their right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
We have a letter in opposition from a homeowner in the immediate area, Ms. Pamela Perchani. And then we also have a letter from the O'Donnell Square Homeowners Association citing that they cannot support this application as they have reached out to the applicant with questions, and to date, they have not received a response.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this site is industrially zoned, and the property was last authorized for use as a warehouse. This particular warehouse building covers nearly all of the lot, and in fact is pretty much shaped to the contours of the public streets and a former railroad right-of-way that runs next to the property. The applicant is proposing to use just one portion of this larger building as the laundromat. There would need to be appropriate modifications to the front facade of this portion of the existing structure, which the applicant is proposing to make. However, the designs were not included in the material available to the department. The proposed use would need 4 parking spaces, and essentially it's functionally impossible for the applicant to provide those parking spaces on the site. Therefore, the applicant is urged to consider alternately shared parking arrangements as described in the zoning code. The department recommends approval of the application, subject to the applicant providing off-street parking close to this property to serve the patrons of the proposed use. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Priebus, is your client amenable to the condition that's offered by the Department of Planning?
He is, but what we don't know is my client has another lot at 1201 South Ponca. We don't know whether it's within 600 feet of the building as required under the code. With regard to the parking issue, I would like to point out to the board that under its current configuration as Mr. Zadara's family's paint contracting business, it is a warehouse type of building with huge roll-up doors and no parking in front of them. To the very, that'd be south of the building down to the tip of the triangle, the city has recently put in angled parking, which there would be room for 2 spaces on the premises, except for it would require a curb cut that would take away 4 spaces. However, the proposal is the area, the rectangle in question where we would propose to put the laundromat, which would be approximately 30 by 60, and an additional 30 feet down. We intend to put a storefront there for the entire 60 feet, which means no more garage doors, and it would allow for, I believe, 7 additional angled parking spots in front of the building.
Okay.
So therefore, we would be requesting a variance of the 4 spots in light of the fact that the more commercial as opposed to industrial use of the building would create 7 spots on street parking.
Okay. Generally, though, street parking isn't really.
Understood.
Creating street parking isn't really satisfaction of the parking requirement, though I do understand your point that it's an exchange where, because of the angled parking that's in front of your client's property, that at least insofar as the 4 spaces at the end of the building would preclude him from offering parking on his own property.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so why don't you tell us about what's being proposed, and then also, you guys had an opportunity, I guess, to have a discussion prior to the hearing. I don't know if you had anything as far as a resolution of your opposition, but you can also discuss that at that time, too.
Okay, we spoke to Ms. Bertani, who's lived in the neighborhood for quite some time, and she lives 2 doors up, not on the Athena Square new houses, but in the older houses on the west side of Oldham Street. And we just have to agree to disagree at this point. She's in, I'm not going to speak for her, I'll let her speak for herself, but basically a commercial use would probably be more amenable to the neighbors than an industrial use. However, she opposes the laundromat use, and we've just at a point where we've agreed to disagree.
Okay.
With regard to the plan, the drawing, again, it's a triangular building. Behind it is the railroad, and there's a railroad right-of-way. The P&S Paint Contractors has been in this building for many, many, many years, and that's in Mr. Zadara's family. The lower part, the smaller part of the triangle is still a construction contractor's warehouse type of use. We've only included in this request, as I said, the first 30 feet of front to the north of the building. The other part of that would be considered for a commercial use at a separate time, but there's no proposed tenant at this point, so we haven't put that on this plan. Now, with regard to the idea and the derivation of the idea for a laundromat is, if you're familiar with Samos, two blocks up, that's Mr. Zadara's wife's uncle, and his wife operated the Sunnyside Laundromat directly across the street from Samos, and she, a couple years ago, passed away from cancer. And Mr. Zadara's wife grew up as a kid with her cousins in the laundromat summer times, and it's a business that their family is familiar with. In light of the closing of the Sunnyside, they thought that there was a particular need in the neighborhood, even though there's a lot of residences and people have their washer and dryers. Everybody likes to throw their bedspread or their beach blankets and take them to the laundromat instead of messing up their own equipment, and they have some experience with that. There would be 1 worker and 1 manager, family member on site at all times. the proposed hours would be from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, not a Michael Orr sleep in the laundromat 24/7 that the neighborhood might not like that much. So we're proposing 8 to 8. For the immediate neighborhood, Athena Square and the immediate neighborhood, he would offer pickup and wash and fold and drop off services. It's planned that it would fit 20 washers of different sizes and 13 dryers. Instead of the coin op, they now have where you put it on a card and you put it in the card, and that would be the type of business, so there wouldn't be a lot of cash laying around, and hopefully wouldn't be a generator for somebody trying to rob the place or the people inside. Security cameras would be part of the plan. And again, clean up that front facade, not just this 30 feet, but the additional 30 feet. I discussed the parking already. Mr. Zadera did speak with Mr. Liam Davis from the Greater Greektown Community Alliance, and we understood that they did not have opposition to the proposed plan. Am I missing anything? Mr. Zadera, if you have any questions for Mr. Zadera, he's certainly welcome to entertain those questions.
I think that for right now, we're good, and we
The
can,
triangular area will remain a contractor's?
Yes.
It's storage right now, sir.
That's your company?
Well, the company closed down last May. We closed it down. We'd had enough. So I'm storing muscle cars in there, to be honest with you. So in our overall observation of whatever we put there, whether it was a laundromat, whether it was a restaurant, we needed that triangular place for either freezers and delivery, since it has such the large door, that we could back the delivery trucks off of Oldham Street and get them out of the fairway of traffic so that they can make their deliveries and not impede traffic and park out in the middle and turn their hazard lights on. So that's why the third bay, I call it the third bay, the third garage door wasn't, that's why we decided not to do anything with it.
But we're just here about phase one at this
Yeah,
point.
we're just gonna pay one.
any questions right now? Okay. Ma'am?
Hi, I am Pamela Protani. I sent a letter that you have already. So I have lived at my house at 937 for over 30 years. My house was owned by my grandparents, so I've had a long history where, as a young girl, we would come from my mom's and spend a week in visiting my grandparents in the summertime. So I've seen the area go from industrial, very industrial, from Bob's Trucking, Cowan's Trucking, to the Longshoremen's Hall across the street, to tractor trailers going up and down the streets up until 12 years ago, up and down Oldham Street. If you're familiar with the street, it's a very wide street. So we have had a community of develop over the past 9 years. We have the homes in Athenia Square, we have the homes in O'Donnell Square, and they're all selling at $250,000 to $350,000, all include washers and dryers. I do not feel that we need a laundromat in the area. So if you're familiar with the area, we're right at O'Donnell and Oldham Street. O'Donnell all the way to Conklin Street is all commercial. At the end of our street is a Royal Farm store and a gas station and a Carroll Fuel station. There's a BJ's across the street. There's warehouses, the O'Donnell Street Bridge. So then houses, homes don't begin until the Porter, which are all condominiums that are all new as well, that have their own washers and dryers, that begin at Conklin Street. I didn't learn until today that the laundromat that was in the 500 block of Oldham Street, which is the sunny side I took a picture of, which was 4 blocks up, that's closed. So on Conklin Street, the 800 block of Conklin Street, which is less than a mile from our house at his business, there is a coin-operated laundromat right on the corner. On 3403 Eastern Avenue, which is less than a mile from the house and his business, there is a 24-hour laundromat called American Laundromat. At 300 Eaton at Bank Street, there is a super laundromat coming in that probably has 100 washers in there. I drove by that last night. So we don't need a laundromat in the area. I'm concerned about that there's already limited parking in the area because there are so many houses and so many people that live there now. As I said, we've gone from industrial to an actual community. I'm not opposed to him opening another business or something else, but we just are not in need of a laundromat. I have a concern also that just in terms of sewer and sewages, because the sewer continues to back up. January 2 years ago, I had over $3,500 worth of property in my basement that was destroyed by the sewers backing up, and unfortunately, I had to file suit against Baltimore City. I think that may be about it, unless you have a question for me.
I have a question, ma'am.
Mhm.
I thought one of the things, one of your concerns was parking in the area?
Yes.
Would that also still be a concern for any of the other businesses you would consider?
Well, we were just talking because I proposed an idea to them as we were outside, and he owns property right on Ponca Street, that they could always perhaps, whatever, I don't know what the variances and everything are, you would know that better than I, offer valet parking or something like that. So directly across the street from where their building is now, there's 4 houses. Even if that was open 8 until 8, in the wintertime, that would be lights in people's homes. And then right next to that is the Union Hall, the UAW Hall. They have parking there. I just proposed to them renting space there, but they said because of union rules, that's not an option. I have pictures on my phone that the spaces that are there in front of the building now are usually occupied in the daytime and even at night because there's so many houses now that directly across from my house is Dillon Street, which has houses, but they are limited in parking because of the way the development came where there's trees. It's maybe parking for one space, it's trees and curbs. So most of those people on Dillon Street park on Oldham Street as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just, I suppose that those folks that utilize those parking spaces in front of the applicant's business, that's just some permissive use. Are they allowed to park there?
It's a city street, yeah. So I will say in front of his garage doors, he has no parking signs for the garage doors, so no one parks there. But the city, I think maybe 4 years ago, came in and did diagonal parking. So it starts as soon as you turn onto Oldham from O'Donnell Street.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Just one quick point I forgot to mention, and that's as far as the build-out costs are estimated around $400-some thousand, and again, we're gonna pretty up the storefront and create new spots. The equipment, and this jogged my memory when Ms. Protani said about the sewage, the equipment is projected to cost about $650,000, and part of that is the new washers are very water efficient, so our preliminary research is it would just be a regular 4-inch drain pipe for the entire workings, and to purchase used equipment would not be cost effective or environmentally sound, so the modernized equipment.
Okay.
Can I also say something?
Sure.
Having all that added water is adding to everything going through the sewers and suds and everything else.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
2018-222, 5504 through 5506 Hartford Road, Chanel Jenkins.
Good afternoon. If
Either side is fine.
That side for you.
Okay.
All right, you're Ms. Jenkins?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And Ms. Jenkins, we have this as an application to use a portion of the first floor as a daycare center for 20 children. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Folks, all those who intend to give testimony in this matter, if you would please raise your right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes, we do have several letters in opposition to this appeal. First, signed from the director of the Hamilton Laurel Main Street. We also have the owner of Batch Bake Shop, located on Harford Road. Also the owners of Silver Queen Cafe. We have a letter of opposition from Hamilton Hills Neighbor Association, from Ms. Bohm, who is here to testify. And then we have a letter of opposition from Mr. Hilliard, who is representing several hundred neighborhood associations. In this case, citing Harbell and the Westfield Improvement Association.
Planning Department reviewed this application. Planning Department is supportive of the concept of providing the daycare in this facility. However, there is an issue in the eyes of the Planning Department with the safety of drop-off and pickup of children. This particular property is, other than its frontage on Harford Road, a landlocked property, and Harford Road is a very busy street with a considerable amount of traffic volume. It was the conclusion of the department that there is not a location suitable for drop-off or pickup of children on site. And the department therefore recommends a deferral of a complete hearing of the application to allow the applicant time to devise a means of safe drop-off and pickup of children for this facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jenkins, why don't you tell us about what you're proposing here?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am proposing to bring a child care center here into the Hamilton community to help bring a supportive community, help bring support to the community through my child care center. I've been in business for 30 years. I've been inside Title I school, the Waverly area, and I've noticed that near your Title I schools is more of a more thriving area for daycare centers. The proposing question of proper drop-off and pickup, I have been in contact with the owner of the parking lot, and Mr. Rodriguez has assured me that there is plenty of space in order for my parents to be able to utilize the parking area.
Where is this parking lot?
It's directly in back of the building.
So this area right in here?
Yes, sir. There's 3 tiers to it as well. So even if they was to park around the side of the other buildings, they still could walk. And the back door of the building allows you, it's gated off. So even if I was to have supportive coning, that could be on either side to allow space for the children to be able to enter in, I believe would give enough safety zoning.
They would enter somewhere in this back portion?
That is correct.
Would you allow entrance through the front?
No, because of, as they have said, not for drop-off and pickup, not that I would not allow entrance that way, but for the safety of the children, the back way would be the entrance, absolutely.
Okay.
One, because it's closest to parking, and it just seems to make the most sense.
to the parking that you've discussed with Mr. Rodriguez, has he offered a number of parking spaces?
That is correct. So it's 3 tiers to it, and the way
I think what's being asked is, have you been offered a specific number of spaces?
he said that is to my discretion, absolutely.
Well,
So,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
How much staff, or how many staff do you intend?
So I have 4 staff. That is all that is required for 20. And I would only be required 1 parking for 4 staff.
What about for your parents, for
For my,
drop-off and pickup?
so therefore I would have 1 more parking, but they can pay $1 in order to utilize the space as well.
What do you mean by 3-tiered parking?
So that immediate parking spot area right there behind my back entrance, and then it wraps around to the side of the buildings to the left.
There's 3 different parking areas.
Correct. So that it would be able to accommodate, I'm saying that's not just the only area for parking.
To your knowledge, is all that parking owned and/or controlled by Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
So you expect to have 20 cars stopping?
I do not. A lot of the parents are walkers or utilize the MTA.
And presumably, all 20 don't arrive at the same time?
Absolutely not.
I'm asking because my grandkids were at a daycare center at the church right on the corner, and that lot was full pretty much when I would arrive to drop them off. That's why I asked the question.
Any other questions?
Is there a current use of that building right now?
No.
Do you know what it was?
I do not. I'm looking here, and the owner said that there was before me, it was going to be a doggy daycare, but I believe it was sectioned off from the existing restaurant next door that she owns.
Opposition? Mr. Higgins?
So, in my letter, I cited the issues planning cited, which is it would be very difficult to drop kids off in front of the building. There's parking in front of the building. Harper Road's a major arterial. As to the rear drop-off, I think Commissioner Cunningham makes a very good point, is, to my knowledge, that lot is continually in use. And unless the appellant has an agreement with the owner that certain spaces will be hers alone, I'm not sure how that drop-off would work. And at the very least, I would ask the board mandate the appellant provide such an agreement prior to approval. The property has little to no outdoor space for exercise and recreation. And also, both Harbell and the Hamilton-Laurelville Main Street believe that it does not conform with the urban renewal plan for the Hamilton business area, which states street-facing ground floor uses must be primarily retail or service establishments that deal directly with customers, relying heavily on walk-in business and have regular daily hours. That's it.
Okay. Ma'am?
Thank you for your time. I think our biggest concern is the outdoor play space that's necessary according to COMAR regulations, and the fact that that's not available at this space. We would be happy to work with the applicant to find other space within our community. We believe that a daycare center is great.
For the record, ma'am?
Mia Blum, president of Hamilton Hills Neighborhood Association.
Okay. Was there anything beyond the outdoor play space?
Everything's in our letter.
Okay. All right. Sir?
I'm Wayne Carson. I'm a board member of Hamilton Hills Neighborhood Association and a 37-year resident of Hamilton. My problem with it is, as Mr. Hilliard had stated and Ms. Blum had stated, is the parking issue, also the available space for kids outside. And another issue that I have with it is you're 5 doors away from a bar. If the restaurant next door to it reopens, that's also going to be a bar. And you have the Hamilton Tavern right across the street. I know there's laws that prohibit putting a bar near a school and things like that. I'm not sure that we're kind of putting the cart behind the horse this time or in front of it. So that's my issue with it.
Anything further? Okay. Ma'am, do you have anything to say in response?
Yes. So, in regards to a area for play, I have addressed the COMAR from Office of Child Care in reference to the distance in which an area can be from the daycare center and the neighboring school that is at Old Hartford, and like I said, it's on Old Hartford off of Hartford Road. I've spoken with Principal Dunn is her name, and have submitted a space and occupancy permit to the Board of Education. So I'm able to utilize their playground each day during the 11 to 1 hour, or in the afternoon from 2:30 to 4.
Which school is that?
That is Hamilton Elementary.
And you would walk the kids up there?
I can, or,
Quite a hike.
well, it still meets the requirement because it has to be within a mile, and I've measured it, and it's less than a mile.
Like I said, it's quite a hike.
Remind me the ages of which you're going to be servicing?
Servicing ages birth to 13 years of age.
And the COMAR requires, your understanding, to have this outdoor area available every day?
I do.
And you intend to use the outdoor area every day?
Yes, of course, it goes according to weather is permitting as well. So it's not like, it's mandatory that they go outside every day if the weather doesn't permit.
Yes, it's that they have access to the outside play area every day as weather permits.
That's right.
Do you envision any other mode of transportation other than walking?
Yeah, van, yeah. Being able to take them. We, of course, have, for the smaller ones, we have strollers. They don't walk the entire time, but it's children that are 4 and 5 years old, that's not a really long distance. I mean, by the time they get there and play around a little bit and walk back, believe me, they have the energy to do it.
Just to wrap this around the parking issue, you just understand, is it your intent to have the transportation mode available every day?
Yes.
So you would have a van on site?
Yes.
And that would be one of your parking spaces,
Yes.
I assume?
I've already spoke with him in reference to it. It must be one that is, as he put it, stable, with our sign that house our vehicle. And then we could have ones that are parking passes monthly for those that need their individual cars. So you can do it either way.
Any further questions?
I'd like to bring up another point if I could.
Okay.
Traveling up Hartford Road to the intersection of Old Hartford, and then at some point having to cross over that, whether it be there or whether you go up to the school to make that crossover, Sidewalks are very narrow. They're very beat up. Traffic runs down Old Hartford Road pretty hard. I mean, it's not a good space to be taking small children.
Just so the board knows, there's the neighborhood's opposing Royal Farms, which is proposed right across the street. And it absolutely is a very dangerous multi-street intersection.
We've dealt with that case
Just bring it to the attention of the
for,
board.
yeah.
A member who wasn't part of that case.
And the issue with the outdoor play area, it's a requirement that's imposed by the Department of Education and is enforced by the Department of Education. Any further?
The only thing I would add is, what I heard was she has submitted for use of the space. I would ask the board to also require the Department of Education actually grant her use of that space.
Yes. Well, we wouldn't really,
I'm
that
asking
really.
you could say, go away, Michael, I got it.
I was just saying that that is their requirement, so they are her licensing agency, so that is their enforcement.
I hear you. I'm just saying, I would
I hear
hope
you.
that would be part of the board's concerns too.
Okay. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Just maybe add one thing. If we were to move forward with this, I think it would also be appropriate to submit a parking and drop-off pickup plan, maybe to planning department, so they could take a look at it.
She's not proposing a curb cut, which is normally, or a drop-off area, which is normally where that comes into play. But, I mean, these are all things we can get into when we're in deliberation, but, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yep. All right, 2018-242, 1205 through 1219 East 20th Street, William Broadus.
Good evening.
I just look these things on the record.
Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We have this as an application to continue to use premises for service garage and office for used car sales. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sir, if you would please raise your right hand to be sworn.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right. Do we have the staff reports?
Yes. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this site is zoned residential, R8, and is also located within the East Baltimore Midway Urban Renewal Plan area. The property was last authorized for use as heavy sales rental or service, as the classification is given under the current zoning code, which is a non-conforming use in this R8 zoning district. The Planning Department notes that a change of non-conforming use is not something, to another non-conforming use, is not something which the board is authorized to approve according to the current zoning code. For this reason, and for the fact that the East Baltimore Midway Urban Renewal Plan contains a section prohibiting change of what it refers to as non-complying land uses to any other non-complying land use, which is the equivalent of a non-conforming land use to non-conforming land use, the department recommends disapproval of the application because the zoning code does not authorize approval of new non-conforming uses, which the service garage with indoor sales would be in the R8 zoning district, and because both the zoning code and urban renewal plan covering this property's location prohibit changing an existing non-conforming use to any other non-conforming use. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Broadus, sounds like you got a pretty high hurdle here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this property and what it is that you are proposing?
When the owners purchased the property, they was told that it could stay as a service garage. It is actually a service garage, even though it's in a residential area. Once they receive this letter, what they want to do is request a postponement.
Okay.
So we can see what else we can do with the land.
Okay. 2018-243, nope, 242, sorry, 1205 through 1219 East 20th Street is postponed.
Thank you.
So I guess you don't have to go far.
No, I don't.
Because next up is 2018-243, 2400 McElderry Street, which is also William Broadus. All right, and Mr. Broadus, with regard to this proposal, we have that. This application is an application to use the premises as a 20-seat church with accessory offices and meeting rooms on the second floor. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony in this matter would please raise their hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And do we have staff reports with regard to this appeal?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And Mr. Broadus, why don't you tell us about what is being proposed as to this appeal?
This current building has been used as a church for the past 2 years. Housing came past and said they had no use, so they applied for a use. And before it was a church, it was a liquor store and a pizza shop. And I have the pastor and the owner of the building with me.
Okay. Now this is for a 20-seat church. How do you know how often services are? What kind of services are conducted? Is they conducted throughout the week?
I'll let the pastor speak on his
Sure.
terms.
So you can just come down and use the microphone.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have services every Sunday at 10 o'clock, and we convene at noon, no later than noon. We also have a Wednesday Bible study as well, at 7 to 8:30.
Okay, so this would, you'd only really be operating twice a week?
Yes, that's it, for right now. Sometimes we have meetings on Saturdays, but other than that, that's too much, pretty much.
Your name, sir?
My name is Reverend Anthony Miller, Sr. Yes.
Right, it looks like the first floor level is just an open floor plan. I guess there'll be seats that you'll arrange there. Any amplification or musical instruments or any of that?
We currently have just one speaker on the first floor level. Currently, we do not have any musicians at this time. We sing pretty much a cappella, so.
Here on the biggest issue that you have is that you're here on a variance request for your minimum lot area. You've got a 3,000 square foot required minimum lot area, and you've only got 1,139 square feet. How did you go about locating this space as a potential location for the church?
Through a real estate agent.
And they have occupied the spot for 2 years and never had any issues.
Yep.
So they've already been operating?
Yes.
And that's your congregation.
Yes. Yes.
And how'd you wind up here?
Housing. So they didn't have a use.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's 2018-247, 3809 Bancroft Road, Donnie Ankery. All right. You, Ms. Ankery?
I'm the architect, Donnie Incree, and this is the homeowner.
Okay. Your name for the record, ma'am?
Alana Goldfinger.
Okay. And Mr. Ankery, this is an application to construct a one-story rear addition and rear/interior side deck at this location. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Folks, if you would please raise your right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Ankery, why don't you tell us about what's being proposed here?
Yes. So my client has an existing two-story semi-detached house, and just due to the growing family, the amount of bedrooms and eating space is very limited in the house. So we're proposing to do a rear addition that will house a master suite bedroom with some eating space. There will also be a basement beneath it for storage, which is also very limited. And due to the limited size of the property, with the practical difficulty of the size of it, it's the addition and the deck, which will be used for eating areas, will requires a variance, which is why we're here.
What's the square footage of the existing house?
1196.
Looks like the deck wraps around the side and then continues around to the rear.
Correct. Yeah, we have a the only really spot left of land, is the back, which is where the deck goes.
Yeah.
But we did want to maintain access from the breakfast area, which is why the deck wraps around, because the master bedroom is the rear portion, and so we didn't want to cut through. So that's why we had to do the deck around the side.
Other than access, is there any reason for the ramp, say the steps?
Just, go ahead.
I was gonna say, my father is a veteran, and he comes to visit quite frequently, and we just wanna make sure that he's got an agent-owned access, and has
Gotcha.
the generation, so we just wanna make sure that he's gonna be able to easily get into the home as he grows older.
All right. Any other questions?
No.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. 2018-250, 2148 Wilkins Avenue, Gurpreet Kaur. Calling again, 2018-250, 2148 Wilkins Avenue, Gurpreet Kaur. Okay. All right, and we are off the record. All right. Any ones that we want to talk about? Well, I'm sure that there are, but where do we want to start?
Quick correction to our staff report for Belvedere.
Closed front porch?
Yeah, 231. Zoning office set this upstairs for the front yard variance.
Yes.
However, the lot length is only 90 feet deep. Lots less than 100 feet deep, you get a 1 foot discount off your front lot requirement by 1 foot. So, essentially, you have a somewhat shallow lot, which is
Mm-hmm.
we have it as required front yard 20 feet, of 25 feet. But with that 10-foot discount, it takes it down to a 15-foot required front yard. Not a 25-foot required front yard, and they're providing a 17-foot front yard if you include that front as a enclosure, which is like an addition. I just want to verify one quick thing before.
We don't have.
Never mind, rear yard erosion, doesn't apply to front yard. Scratch that. That's my attempt to say that.
I think the real answer to that is